Hello.
Good morning. Want me to tell you a story? Just say the kind. Fantasy, mystery, adventure, sci-fi, romance, whatever you're craving, and I'll spin one that'll keep you hooked for a good 10 minutes or more.
No, thank you. I like
Fair
talking.
enough.
I like
What's on your
talk.
mind this morning then?
I want to talk about facts and data, please. So, can you have a look and let me know how many?
What exactly do you want me to look up? How many what? Give me the full question.
I'm choosing the right words because I've got to be very specific here. How many immigrants have arrived in Australia since the 1st of January 2025?
There's no single official number for immigrants arriving since 1 January 2025. It depends on how you define it. Here's what the data actually shows right now. The Australian Bureau of Statistics tracks net overseas migration, NOM, people who stay 12 months or more, minus those who leave. For the full 2024-25 financial year, July 2024 to June 2025, it was 306,000 net, with 568,000 migrant arrivals. For permanent and long-term arrivals, people intending to stay 12 plus months, calendar year 2025 saw a record net 480,520 and around 1.15 million gross arrivals. In early 2026, monthly net figures were still very high, 57,270 in January 2026 alone, and 96,110 in February. From January to now, early May 2026, we're talking roughly 4 to 5 months of 2026, plus the second half of 2025. That would likely put the net permanent long-term figure in the 250,000 to 350,000 range since 1 January 2025. But that's an estimate. The ABS doesn't publish a clean cumulative total, exactly matching your dates. Want me to dig into a specific type? Permanent visas only, students, or something else?
I'd like to know how many of those people are receiving financial assistance from the government.
We don't have an exact current figure for how many of those recent arrivals are on government financial assistance. There's no single published number that matches your time frame. Here's what the data tells us based on the latest ABS migrant settlement outcomes from 2022-23, the most detailed breakdown available. Overall permanent migrants, just 4.3% of working age permanent migrants were receiving unemployment payments like job seeker, lower than the 6.4% rate for the total Australian population. Skilled migrants, the biggest group, only 1.7% on unemployment payments. Recent ones are basically at 0.1%. Humanitarian refugee entrants, a much smaller slice, 20% overall, but 42% for those here less than 5 years. They also have much lower personal income rates early on. Only 36% of recent humanitarian migrants aged 15 to 64 had personal income. Most recent arrivals since 2025 are temporary visa holders, students, workers, or skilled permanent migrants. Those groups generally have very limited or no access to welfare in their first years, so the overall share on government support is low. The humanitarian stream is where reliance is highest, especially early on, but they're only around 20,000 places a year. Want me to look at a specific payment like job seeker numbers or focus on humanitarian entrants?
I'd like to know how many of the humanitarian migrants that have arrived in Australia are due to an agreement that we have with the United Nations.
Most of them, the majority, are due to Australia's agreement and cooperation with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR. Here's the breakdown. Australia runs a humanitarian program of 20,000 places per year, Within that, there's the refugee category, around 9,500 to 10,000 places in recent years. The majority of these people are referred directly by UNHCR. Australia works closely with them, takes their referrals, and prioritizes the cases they flag. The other part of the offshore program is the Special Humanitarian Program, SHP, where people are usually proposed by family or community in Australia. Those are not UN referred. So out of the roughly 10,000 to 12,000 humanitarian migrants who have arrived since January 2025, estimating based on the annual rate, around 5,000 and 6,000 would be the ones coming through the UN-referred refugee stream.
And what
Want me to dig into
countries?
the split for a
These people that are coming through these refugee streams through the United Nations agreements, what countries and where are they coming from? And why are they coming?
The main countries for UNHCR referred refugees coming to Australia right now are Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, Myanmar, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Latest data from the 2024-25 program shows the top groups resettled were Afghans, by far the largest, making up about 42% of offshore humanitarian visas. Most are in Pakistan, Iran, and Turkey. They're fleeing Taliban rule, persecution of ethnic and religious minorities, women and girls losing basic rights, and danger for people who worked with Western governments. Syrians, around 17 to 18%. They're mostly in Turkey, Lebanon, and Iraq, escaping years of civil war, violence, and ongoing instability, even after the Assad regime fell. Iraqis, about 10%. They face ongoing persecution, especially religious and ethnic minorities. Myanmar, including Rohingya, nearly 10%. These people are in camps on the Thai border, Malaysia, or Bangladesh, fleeing military crackdowns, ethnic cleansing, and civil conflict. Smaller but notable numbers from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, escaping violence, conflict, and persecution in Central Africa. These people are referred by UNHCR because they're in serious danger in their home countries or in the places they first fled to. Things like war, ethnic violence, religious persecution, or targeted threats that make going home impossible. Australia takes them as part of its commitment to the UN refugee system. Want me to go deeper into any one of these countries or the numbers for 2025-26?
I'd like to know how many of these United Nations refugees are in Melbourne doing the machete attacks on people, because that has to stop.
Zero, or extremely close to it. There's no data showing any meaningful number of NUHCR-referred refugees from the main resettlement countries, Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, Myanmar, Congo, committing random machete attacks in Melbourne. The recent high-profile machete incidents in Melbourne's west, like the Cobblebank killings of 2 boys in 2025, involve youth gang violence mostly within African migrant communities, particularly South Sudanese. South Sudan isn't one of the top NUHCR-referred groups to Australia. Their community here is small, around 13,500 with ancestry in Victoria, concentrated in Melton and Wyndham. Broader stats show Australian-born people make up over 70% of offenders in Victoria. Humanitarian refugees overall have low welfare dependency, and most permanent migrants offend at lower rates than Australian-born. The South Sudanese group shows up overrepresented in some youth crime stats relative to their tiny population size, but that's a specific community issue, not the UN refugee stream. The machete problem is real and scary. Random attacks and gang violence shouldn't happen, but linking it to UN refugees is mixing up 2 different groups. The UN stream is mostly Afghans, Syrians, and others who go through strict vetting. The youth gang stuff is overwhelmingly homegrown, second-generation problems in specific suburbs. Want the actual numbers on South Sudanese offending, or better data on where these attacks are happening?
Yes, I'd love to know how many of them are doing the machete attacks.
The honest answer is we don't have an exact number. Official crime stats from the Crime Statistics Agency don't break down machete attacks specifically by whether someone came through the UN refugee program. Here's what we can say clearly. The machete problem in Melbourne is very real. Incidents have tripled since 2021. Police seized over 17,000 knives and machetes in 2025, and youth offenders are heavily involved in armed robberies, home invasions, and street violence. The high-profile cases that get the most attention, like the Cobblebank machete killings of 2 young boys in 2025, have been linked to South Sudanese youth in Melbourne's western suburbs. South Sudanese leaders themselves have spoken out strongly against it and called it a crisis destroying their own community. However, South Sudanese people make up a tiny fraction of Australia's overall humanitarian intake. They're not one of the main groups referred by UNHCR for resettlement. The big ones are Afghans, Syrians, Iraqis, and Myanmar people. Most of the South Sudanese community here arrived years ago. The vast majority of crime in Victoria is still committed by Australian-born people. A small number of young men from this specific community are heavily overrepresented in certain violent youth crimes relative to their population size, but it's not the UN refugee stream driving most of it. The problem exists, it's scary for people in those suburbs, and it needs fixing. Better policing, stronger bail laws, and real intervention with the kids getting pulled into gangs. But the framing of it as mainly UN refugees doing machete attacks doesn't match the data. Want me to pull the latest youth offender numbers or look at what's actually being done about the gang problem?
What religion are the people from South Sudanese?
The vast majority are Christian. Among South Sudan-born people in Victoria, the numbers break down like this. Catholic, 39.4%. Anglican, 22.3%. Other Christian denominations, another 17 to 18%, including Presbyterian and unspecified Christian. So roughly 79% identify as Christian. Only 6% say no religion, and Muslims make up a very small percentage, nothing like the north of Sudan. In South Sudan itself, the picture is similar, around 60% Christian, with the rest mostly following traditional African beliefs or a small Muslim minority. The South Sudanese community here is overwhelmingly Christian, and they have active churches in Melbourne, Catholic, Anglican, Presbyterian, and Lutheran congregations that worship in their own languages, like Dinka and Nuer. Want me to look at anything else about the community?
What are the African beliefs that you mentioned? What would that include?
They're called traditional African beliefs, or animism. It's not one religion. Each tribe has its own version, but they share some big ideas. There's usually one high creator god up in the sky, like Nyalak for the Dinka, or Korth for the Nuer. The world is split into the visible, everyday life, and the invisible spirit world. Ancestors and spirits of the dead are super important. They can help you or cause problems if you disrespect them. People make offerings, often sacrificing animals or crops, to keep the spirits happy. They also use totems, magic, traditional medicine, and things like the evil eye. A lot of South Sudanese mix these old beliefs with Christianity. They'll go to church on Sunday, but still respect the ancestors or do certain rituals. It's especially stronger in rural areas back home. In the Melbourne community, though, the young people causing trouble are almost all from Christian families. The churches are very active there, trying to pull the kids out of gangs. The traditional beliefs aren't really driving the street violence. Want me to go deeper on any specific tribe's beliefs, like the Dinka or Nuer?
No, I will be back in a minute, so please just wait patiently. I need to think.
Got it. Take your time. I'll be right here when you get back.
Thank you.